All right, everybody, welcome to Fridays at the Fifth. My name is Orlando Morales. I am the Director of Education and Engagement at the Fifth Avenue Theater, and I still am on mute, so you're not seeing my face. Now you are.
There you are.
It takes a moment, to figure out how to do this again, especially after we took a little sabbatical there, but we're back now and excited to be back. So I once again am joined by the super lovely and talented. Your name is Faith.
Are you talking about me?
Yes, I'm talking about you. Who else would I be talking about?
I don't know. There's a lot of talented people on this webinar. My name is Faith. I am the Education and Engagement Assistant at the Fifth Avenue, and my pronouns are she, her.
Amazing. And Faith will be functioning as our stage manager today and fielding your questions as best we can in the time we have together. Before we get started today, let's remember that the Fifth Avenue Theater is on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish. We honor and thank them, and I'm hoping that we can invoke the memory of those ancestors as we continue to negotiate this period of uncertainty, and also cultivate the resilience of all of our ancestors as we move forward. It's be super important. And we are kicking things off today with a new segment, which is our audience spotlight. And thanks, Faith, for spearheading this. This is an opportunity for us to get to know all y'all out there in Zoom land. Thank you to everybody who has already filled out Faith's Spotlight questionnaire. And I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Faith. I'm tossing you the mic to introduce our first audience spotlight.
Got it. Picked it up. Thanks guys so much for sending those questionnaires in. It was so fun to get the responses. So fun because I felt like I was getting to know you a little bit better just because I'm super nosy, but also because I just want to meet you. So we've got our first ever spotlight on the listener, and we're going to introduce her right now. Coming on stage, please welcome Miss Kira. And I think that if she can unmute her video, then we can even see her too. Kira! Da-da-da!
Awesome.
Yes! Hi, Kira. How are you?
I'm good.
Great. Where are you calling in from today?
Bainbridge Island.
Bainbridge Island. Awesome. Well, I saw that you filled out our listener questionnaire, so we're going to go through that a little bit here. We asked listeners to admit one of the guilty pleasure musical theater songs that they are listening to nonstop these days during their quarantine. Do you remember what you submitted?
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. Yes, the ultimate feel-good song. Are you the kind of listener who listens to it quietly sitting by yourself, or are you dancing everywhere? Dancing, yes. Yeah, I hear you. Me too. And you've been watching a couple other musicals too, right? You've been watching quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember what are the other ones you've been listening to? What's one other one you listened to or watched?
Les Mis.
Yes, that's perfect because it actually brings us into our next question perfectly. So what is a role, we asked listeners, what is a role that you would love to be cast in, even if you think you could probably never be cast in it? Do you remember what you answered?
Cosette in Les Mis.
Les Mis, yes. And Bainbridge Island, I think, was doing Les Mis, weren't you guys?
Yeah.
And what role were you in it when you were in the show?
Little Penny.
Little Eponine. That's wonderful. And when you said that you wanted to play Cosette in Les Mis, what's something that you like that she does that you wish you could do in the show?
Her singing parts.
Yes,
so glorious, so beautiful.
We also in the sky. That's the castle in the sky part. No.
Oh,
Castle in the cloud.
There
There it is. There it is. Sorry, that's the wrong.
No, you're on the right page. We asked all of our listeners, we always ask all of our panelists, what is a high note? What is something making them happy this week? And I saw that you submitted a video. Do you remember what the video was?
One day.
Miz.
One day more. Say it again. One day more.
One day more.
One day more. Yes. Why do you love that song? What's making you happy about it?
I like to sing.
It's so uplifting. Everybody's singing together. It makes me feel like I'm with other people, even though I'm in my quarantine. All right, last but not least, last question on the panel, on the panelist discussion. So we ask all of our listeners which Into the Woods prologue, beginning of the musical, that they would choose. And so our options were the Broadway original cast, or the London cast, or the 2014 movie. Which one did you choose? Which is your favorite?
The movie.
Yes, I love that. What did you like about the movie?
It was fun to watch the singing.
Yeah, and there were all those like fabulous stars singing as well that I was sort of like, wait, you can sing? Oh, well, we always end. What? You laughing at me?
No, this is good. One, this is a very nerdy question, and I love it for that. And two, we're just gonna ignore that the stars might have had as much help as they needed to do what they did.
That's true. Yeah, they've had personal assistants.
Yeah.
And we always ask all of our panelists on Fridays the 5th if they want to give a shout out to anyone. Who would you like to shout out, Ms. Kira?
Lisa Manicon.
And what does she do?
She's a
Voice teacher.
she teaches singing.
Yeah, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, perfect.
Lisa?
Do you take classes with her?
Yeah.
I
Amazing.
love
I'm
that shout out. Lisa Melnicorn is an amazing teacher and educator in our area. So yes, Lisa.
And I also see that Miss Clements is in the chat as well. Kira's director.
What's up? Well, Kira, thank you so much for being our first audience spotlight. And thank you, Faith, for putting that together. I am so looking forward to our future audience spotlights and meeting more of you all out there. So be sure to fill out that the thing that's called the form.
The thing that's called the form.
Thing that's called the form. Fill that out. And Kira, I hope you have a great
in the
weekend.
chat right now.
Yeah, there we go.
Boom, boom, boom.
Kira, thank you again. Thanks. I hope you have a great weekend. And we'll see you out there in the audience, and hopefully we'll get a chance to chat again in the future.
Okay.
We'll see
Bye,
you.
Kira.
Take it easy. All right. That was amazing. We're going to keep doing that. That was fun. All right. So we have some other students who are joining us today, our student panelists. Who are you? Where are you coming at us from? Tell us a little about yourselves. Let's start with Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Cooper from Moses Lake. I am the student costumer for the high school. I'm a junior. I use she, her pronouns.
Amazing. And then let's go Sophia and then Cora.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I go to Holy Names. I'm a senior, graduating soon. She, her pronouns. And I've been costuming for 2 years now at our high school.
Very cool.
Hi, I'm Cora Marshowitz. I'm the co-head for costumes at Meadowdale High School. I'm a junior, and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. Well, student panelists, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to hear your contributions to the conversation and your questions later on. And I think it's so impressive that we have schools now that have students that are in charge of costuming and wardrobe. I think at least my high school, it was like the drama teacher and Mrs. Jones, who is Kira's mom. So at my school. We are also joined by our special guest today, our presenter, Melanie Burgess. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about Melanie Burgess, who last worked at the Fifth on Austin's Pride, but has also worked on Urinetown, Assassins, The Buddy Holly Story, The Sound of Music. Around our region, she's worked at Seattle Opera, Seattle Rep, ACT, Intimon Theater, the Village Theater, and then also outside of our area, the Guthrie, Cincinnati Playhouse, Denver Center, Arizona Theater Company, Minneapolis Children's Theater, Tantrum Theater, Ohio, Idaho Theater for Youth, the Honolulu Theater for Youth, and Hawaii Opera. Melanie received her MFA from the University of Washington. Go Dogs. It's been a parade of dogs here lately, and I'm totally here for that. She is a recipient of the first Gregory Award for Outstanding Costume Design in 2010, and again in 2019 has received 7 Seattle Footlight Awards. She is a professor of costume design at Cornish College of the Arts, And we are incredibly excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Melanie. Welcome to Fridays at the Fifth.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sweet.
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna transition. I was gonna transition us to our high notes, unless you had something.
Yeah, that's great. You do that.
Okay, cool. I'm so happy you're here today. And as a way of getting to know all of our panelists, every week we ask everybody to share a high note, something that's brought them joy or hope while under quarantine. And so, Faith, as always, you're going to kick us off. Faith, what was your high note for this week?
Okay, well, I think the video speaks for itself, but there have been some folks in New York who rewrote the Avenue Q song.
Oh yes, I've seen this.
At home.
I think of the Broadway remixes that I've seen in the Zoom format lately, this has been my favorite, and I think the lyrics have been the highlight for me. So definitely something to check out.
I will put it in the chat for people to watch in its entirety, but it's funny and it's cute and it'll put a smile on your face.
Totally. Okay. Thank you, Faith. Sophia, what was your high note for this week?
My high note was
A little bit about my high note, which was, it's a little bit of a self-plug, but it's of the Rising Star Project performances that happened on Friday and Saturday. We were so excited to present 4 new student-written musicals, and I think my high note was definitely watching those come to life, and also this key change that's here. I wonder if we can hear that in a second. But our Rising Star Project students totally brought it, and they're still up on Facebook if you want to check them out, the performances from Friday and Saturday night. Hopefully some of y'all in the audience was able to check them out when they were live, when we were broadcasting them. But if you didn't, it's not too late. Check it out. Here's the key change. And now let's take the keys. Yeah, that was my literal and also figurative high note for this week. And I'm going to toss it over to Emily. Emily, tell us a little bit about, oh my gosh, what is this?
Okay, so I just got new baby goats. These aren't them, but they remind me of them, and they're baby goats, and I love them. And I have a black one. His name is Marco, and I had a white one, and I called him Pan after the Greek god because he keeps screaming because he's a goat. But they're both adorable, and I love them.
Oh my gosh. This is great. This is bringing me joy right now. Thank you so much, Emily, for bringing that, and good luck with your goats. I think that's amazing. And then last but not least, bringing us home today is Cora. Cora, tell us a little bit about your high note.
The minute I saw this fabric, I fell in love with it.
So this is a TikTok that I found, and it was a guy making a shirt inspired by the movie Call Me By Your Name. And he makes a shirt, and I thought the fabric was really cool, and like at the end, if you go and watch it, the sleeves were really they were like a funky sleeve, and I really like funky sleeves, and I just thought it was really cool.
Amazing. Yeah, check that out.
He makes making a shirt look so easy. He's like, you just this, and you just that, and then it's shirt.
What I love too is that there's craft on TikTok. Right? Like something that I thought was reserved for like viral dancing is now being hijacked for creative people. I think that is amazing. Okay, thank you everybody for sharing your high notes. And if you have a high note you want to share with us out there, drop them down in the chat, and hopefully we'll get those out there into the world. Faith, to you. Oh, do you still have the? I can do it for you. So as you're still muted too, by the way.
I'm
Dollar in the
gonna
jar.
keep talking into the void.
Dollar in the jar. Well, last week I totally talked over you, so I want to give you your chance to do this. So I feel bad.
I'm ready. Here we go. As many of you know, Fridays the 5th is a program dedicated to bringing students together to learn more about the craft of musical theater. So whether you're just curious or deeply passionate about musicals, we want to empower you by giving you a chance to interact with theater professionals who have dedicated their lives to the work. So that's what we're about to do right now. To all of you in the audience, I put this in the chat too, but feel free to ask your questions, drop them in the question and answer box, or put them in the chat. And a heads up, as always, we'll love to remind you that we love a question that begins with the word how.
Yes. Such as Melanie Burgess, welcome again. How did you get into the world of costume design for theater?
Well, I, like many people that work in design, started out as an actor because that's what programs are really robust in. And I actually didn't really take drama classes until my senior year in high school because I thought it was all just oral reading and I didn't like to read out loud. So much to my surprise, it was really great that that's not what drama is at all. So I headed off to undergrad and got a degree in theater and worked in the costume shop as a work study. And that allowed me to do some designing in my college and learn a lot about just what costuming is, etc. And, but my main focus was acting. And so I did that for about 8 years after I graduated. And then I eventually moved, I went to school in Boise, Idaho, and I moved to Seattle. And I just, I fell in love, I got married, I had my first of 2 daughters, and everything shifted for me. And I'm associated with a school here, Lakeside School in Seattle, and they needed a costume person to do their shows. And so they asked me if I would, and I was like, well, yeah, I did that in college. Sure, I'll give it a try. And I realized that it was a much better fit for me than acting. And I sort of prefer that my work is what people look at and not me. So, so that was a much better fit. I was very lucky in that the artistic director of Seattle Children's Theater, Linda Hartzell, was a teacher at Lakeside. And she said, you're really good at this. You should be doing this professionally. And she invited me to come to the Children's Theater and design there. So that launched my whole career change, and from there met other directors, and it just took me other places, etc. And then I also decided I always sort of felt like I kind of learned about costume design through what I call the back door, as opposed to studying it specifically in college. So when I was much older, I went back to get my degree because I also wanted to teach. And so I got my MFA in costume design in 2000. And now teach at Cornish College of the Arts. So so it's all worked out. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and then I will say though that if I really look back, I sort of feel like costume design chose me more than me choosing it by the sort of, you know, crazy route that got me here. But I also look back at things that I was doing when I was a kid that was so clear now that I really liked characters and I really liked drawing them. So I have a little video to share with everybody that really is about, my journey about drawing costumes. Yeah.
Let me cue that up for you. Here we go.
To be a costume designer is to create character through the medium of clothing. When I was 11, I was totally obsessed with drawing people and their clothes. I applied my interest in clothes and sketching in the one costume course available during undergrad. The assignment was to design Hamlet. taught by a technical director, there were no instructions in figure drawing, so I gave it my best shot. It was this class, work study in the costume shop, and drawing that whetted my appetite for costume design. My first professional design was at Seattle Children's Theater. Still with no formal training, I was reliant on a variety of sources to either copy poses from or to inspire a style for a particular project. That included lots of kids' books, calendar artwork, work of famous artists, just about anything that I could get my hands on. As a self-taught artist, I immersed myself in the story of each play, which yielded a new style, illustrations of not just costumes, but characters animated in their scene, a way of capturing a dramatic moment. Under the impetus of grad school, my methodologies took a close examination. Were my renderings too precious? Was I being efficient enough? So I tried experimenting with different media and techniques to see if I could break through my tendency to be tight and laborious. In a pivotal moment, I put down my pencil, which really means I put down my eraser, and I picked up a fine-tipped pen, vellum paper, and Prismacolor markers, and I forced myself to draw more loosely. I even experimented with attaching the actual fabrics onto my renderings. And I experimented with Photoshop collages, really before Photoshop was even a thing. Then I had a flash of inspiration. So I started taking photos of all kinds of people, and family members, and actors at auditions, even strangers on the street. And I transformed the photos into a simplified outline and sketched over the top of them. I would create templates to use with transparent vellum that would be a variety of real body types, the kinds that we see on stage. I even took photos of myself to get the exact pose I wanted. With the template as a tool, I was free to experiment with monochromatic tones. These were my study in figure drawing. By using them, I became fast and proficient with all aspects of drawing the human body. I began the practice of capturing the likenesses of actors. I moved on from the templates and re-employed the familiar 8.5 head drawing method. I also explored the blend of my artistic hand and technology, perfecting Photoshop collages. My current rendering toolbox is full of interchangeable techniques, and I love choosing which ones I'll use to best suit a project. Looking over the evolution of my sketching skills and style, I see my commitment to practice and to take criticism and invent new methods in response. I can hardly wait to see what form my renderings will take next.
Great. Well, I hope that was, whoops. Were
No,
you saying something? 'Cause
I was
your
saying
lips
something, I was
were
just
moving,
muted. I was totally muted. I have to put a dollar in the jar. I was just saying that was amazing. It was so I had no idea that a rendering, as you call it, and maybe you can explain a little bit about what that is. But a rendering doesn't just have to be, you drawing something. And I'm wondering if we could just start really quick before we launch into your slides. Can you talk a little bit about renderings and what exactly they are and what their purpose is?
Absolutely. So a rendering is a costume designer's tool of communication. So, we want to provide visuals that support what our ideas are. And so in the process of working on a design and starting a design, I I am going to read the play. I'm going to get information about the play and make some analysis, see what is required. Sometimes that's specific because someone's going to say, oh, do you like my new yellow dress? So I better make sure that I'm designing a yellow dress, right? So there's information that comes from the script, and then I will start sketching some ideas, and it might be in preliminary ideas before I move into a final rendering. But all of those are ways of communicating with the director and the creative team. And the creative team is the costume designer, the scenic designer, the sound and lighting designer. It might include the choreographer, or a projectionist if there's projections in the scenery. So anyone that's working on the production of the show is called the creative team. And so I need to communicate the aspect of the art that I'm creating for the project. And so the best way for me to do that is with a rendering. So it will usually come in a sketch form, and then that goes through a meeting process of sort of agreement that this is the way we want these costumes to look. And then I will refine those into more of a finished sketch and then paint it. And that is what constitutes a rendering.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I know you have some other slides. Did you want to launch into talking a little bit about your intent?
So what I want to do is just to take you through the process of what a professional costume designer does, right? So we, of course, I get the first, the sort of ask if I'm available to do a production, and I read the script. I look at my calendar and make sure that I indeed am free to be able to do that project. And that can be really anywhere from 3 to 6 months, sometimes in opera, 2 years out from when the production actually goes into rehearsal. So, you know, we're doing our work well ahead of time of that process when actors are coming into the rehearsal hall. And so once I read a show, just like I mentioned before, I really am, I'm getting all the information out of it. I'm responding to it. The first meeting is always just a response of the play. It's not me launching in to say what the costumes are going to be. It's all of the creative team talking about what the play means to them. And sometimes a director may come into that meeting with some really strong ideas that they want the direction of the play to go. And sometimes they'll walk in and say, I don't know yet. So I'm asking all of you as part of the team to come up with what that concept is going to be together. That's my preferred way of creating costumes. And so with Urinetown, for example, Bill Berry directed this, and it was, you know, if you're familiar with the musical, it's you know, it's quirky and kind of has some room for interpretation or to come up with a concept. And so for me, the way of, I didn't start sketching like I could in the past. And I will say that I'm using technology a lot these days. And in fact, the drawings that you're going to see for these drawings were not hand drawn on a piece of paper and painted with watercolors. I did them on my iPad, so they're digital renderings. But I have a stylist, and I use a program called Procreate, and that allows me to. It's just like drawing on a piece of paper, so it's really good technology. And so for the start of this process, before we were all deciding where we wanted to go, I collaged various exploratory, what I call style collages. And I said, so this is what it might look like if we, let me back up and say that Bill said, well, you know, usually the show is kind of placed in the 30s or 40s. Doesn't mean we have to do that, but that's kind of where people place the costumes, right? And so so we left that meeting and I said, I want to explore more than that, right? Not just to do it the way that it traditionally is done. And so the way that I created these style collages was to take the sections that are the groups that are in Urinetown. We have the cops, we have the poor people, we have the Caldwells and the executives, and we have the workers. And so those are the groups that I concentrated on as I created these collages. And this was what they might look like if it were in the 30s and 40s. And then with the next slide, please. Then I also explored modern, like what if this production were in a modern lens, and the police look like they were in riot gear, right? And the Caldwells were very wealthy and were wearing modern clothes. The workers would look like those examples of somebody that's working in construction or various accoutrement that we would recognize. And the poor would look like really, like homeless people, essentially. And then on the next slide. And then there was sort of the oldie-timey, we're not really going to say what time it is, but, what would that look like? And so for me, that was drawing on, let's have it be from a lot of different oldie-timey things, and not necessarily saying that it had to be specifically in 1900, right? Like, what if it just, we were nondescript about that? And it could just draw on a variety of things, but it looked like it was from the past. So that's what that looked like. And the next one. And then there are two inspirations out of the style collages, because I presented 5 of them in exploring what they would be. And we landed on the 2 that I'll show you now and next. One, which is no time. So what does it look like? Which is all, we hear that a lot. That's kind of a fun, there's a trend on designing costumes that are no time, right? Which really doesn't really exist, because you can't not have no time, or you just would not have clothes on people, right? They come from somewhere. But there's a neutrality about no time that doesn't nail it specifically. And so in this one, it was sort of like, oh, what if the cop is not like a uniform we recognize, but there definitely is a uniform about it? Or what about the poor, if it's a lot of this sort of, bamboo clothes and natural clothing and nondescript shapes that don't really say a particular time. And, pants that are big and baggy, or wraparound pants, or not necessarily feeling like it's very specific to a time. And then that for me meant that the Caldwells and the execs would sort of definitely have a modern feel to them, but maybe it could range from anything in the 21st or the latter part of the 20th century, and it wasn't very specific. And that there's a word that we use for this, which is called anachronistic design. Anachronistic means out of time. So it means that you could add various things on one costume, that maybe it's a 1950s hat, but it's a 1970s shirt, but it's a 1800s long skirt, right? And that what you're really trying to do is just to find character through the things that make sense about what they're wearing, and not to get too hung up on it being accurate to a period. And so no time allows you to do anachronistic design pretty easily. And then on the next slide, then the one, so that we merged both that idea of no time for this design and what's called epic theater. So this is really sort of what, if anybody has heard of Brecht and Brechtian, which is really sort of pushed and overly emphasized in a very theatrical way. And so the things on this collage that inspired us was a very tight color palette. So it's black and white and it's graphic. So you see a lot of plaids and polka dots and checks and etc. And you also see a lot of striping, right? Like on the collage on the girl's second from the top and on the left with the black dress and the sort of stripes on the bottom and along the button placket, that inspired a lot of what we did with piping and trimming everything with stripes that would emphasize what that was. And then we also pushed the makeup of the epic theater, which is just to sort of extract it a little bit so that it almost has this quality, sort of a clown-like quality to it, that just separates from the deep emotions of a serious play and just makes it a little broader in style. And that indeed is what we ended up doing. So for instance, with this sketch of Caldwell, B. Caldwell, that would be taking a suit that feels incredibly powerful, really making it as graphic by adding the black piping on it, and a really graphic tie and this sort of border, and then also shortening the pants to be high waters, right, with some graphic socks underneath that, so that it was really sort of forcing a little bit of that sort of clown-like aspect of epic theater. And I think I maybe have another slide. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Erica.
Yeah. And this is it. Okay, great. Yeah. And then it was, you know, like sort of emphasizing various things about, you know, kind of finding that, oh, it could be kind of a 1960s or 1920s, that anachronistic idea, particularly in what's happening. Oh, I think those might be timed.
I think it's timed, yes.
Yeah. Stop that part. But this is that, yeah.
There you go. I'll just keep switching back.
Yeah. Okay, great. I just wanted to say something about this because this illustrates a couple of things. So you see on this sketch of Little Sally that was the original idea. And it was a different wig for her. We thought maybe we would just color the actress's hair. And then when we get to, and we built that dress to look like the rendering. And when we were in our fittings, the actress didn't really want to cut her hair. And we're not, you know, I mean, that's a conversation that you have with a performer. So we decided to wig her. And the wig that we first put on her to make it look like this rendering she just looked too normal, really, for this show, right? So then we decided we'd throw color into it. So the wig that you see in the picture is that. However, this was in the photo shoot before we finished the play because my job's not done until opening night. And the wig changed again even from that, right? So, you know, it's a process. Even though it looks like that rendering says it all, it's still a process. And it goes through the process of fittings and what comes out of rehearsal reports. And then it also goes to when we get to dress rehearsal and we see everything together on stage. And like I said, we are still working and tweaking until we open. And this is a great illustration of that fact that sometimes it stays just like the rendering. Like I think Caldwell looked exactly like the rendering at the end of the day. And this one didn't. Right, so that will also happen. All right, we can turn that annoying thing off.
Okay, let's get this.
Yeah, so I feel like if we have some questions that are accruing there, we're happy to answer some questions.
Yeah, let's toss it to our panel. Sophia, do you have a question for Melanie that's come up for you?
I would just like to ask, what advice would you give like a younger sophomore who is hoping to like start a career in this? What do you wish you could tell your younger self, or just advice you would give students?
That's good. You know, this is my top advice, and I think it is applicable to anything that that you do is be likable. Because, and that really what that means is, it doesn't mean to be overly, I don't know, obsequious or something like that, or overly nice and not be real. But kindness goes a long ways, because I feel like particularly as designers, there are just few of us that are working on each team. So that just means that, it's more competitive to get hired to do shows. And I think when you are a person that others want to have in the room together, that says a lot. So you may be really brilliant at what you do. And I don't think I'm brilliant, but I think I've had some moments of brilliance, but I don't think I'm brilliant every time out. But I do think I'm somebody that others like to have on the team. And I think that's really important. If you're interested in, costumes, people come to costuming for different reasons, right? I always say for myself, I'm a storyteller, and that's what I love the most, why I love being a part of the theater world. And I just happen to speak through the medium of clothing, but I'm not a lover of clothes, right? Like some people are passionate about clothing or fashion itself. I'm not one of those people, but I do really like storytelling. So there's a variety of ways in which you can participate in this art form that is not necessarily specific. It can come from a lot of different ways, but I would say for myself, be a kind person, be likable.
And that's advice that has been echoed by some of our other past panelists too, of the importance of kindness and the importance of seeing yourself as a storyteller. So yeah, I think that's great to hear from you. And just a reminder that this is such a collaborative art form, right? And so if you're not a good collaborator, it's hard to get those gigs. So yeah. Hey, Cora, do you have a question for Melanie?
Yeah, it's kind of broader, but I was just wondering do costumes kind of differ between theater and opera? Like, are they different in any way, or are they like kind of the same?
That's a great question. They are different in that usually because opera and musical theater somewhat, but some of our stories for musical theaters are, like you think about Rent or something like that. You're not coming up with a big wild concept for that. You need those to look like real people talking to each other and occasionally singing to each other, right? But with the opera, because it is already augmented by the fact that it is sung all the way through, it allows designers to come in and say, hey, this isn't reality anyway. So let's imagine really largely, and let's just tell this story as, epically or as abstract or, creatively as possible. And so I think you can tend to really push the form much more so in opera than in theater. Yeah, great question.
Does the size of the house kind of play into that a little bit too?
And I think absolutely, because, and really honestly, opera and the musical theater that is presented at the Fifth Avenue is really pushed, even when it's, like you have to, there's not subtlety is lost on the Fifth Avenue stage, right? Particularly if you're in the balcony, and so you sort of design not for the people that are sitting up close, but really for the mid-house range. So you want things to be just a little more graphic. Contrast helps a lot. You want to make sure that the actor's face is really seen well. So having a contrast in color of what they're wearing really helps. Flesh tone may actually look like someone's not wearing something, and it just blends into their, skin tone. And so that contrast which is why like the wigs tend to be a little bit larger in scale. So, you're forcing some of those scale issues just that much more. And with opera, the same thing. It usually is a large audience. And so you're also pushing those exaggerations in some level. Yes.
Cool, amazing. Emily, do you have a question for Melanie as well?
Yeah. This is a bit more personal. Some of your favorite shows to costume for, because I've done like 6 shows and I have favorites, so I know you do.
Yes, I do. I really liked doing Into the Woods because it just is, you know, again, you get to really push the norms of things and what does fairy tale really mean, etc. Interestingly enough, a production that I did of Jesus Christ Superstar, I really loved, and it wasn't about that the costumes were elaborate, but they were real people, and we sort of had the concept that all the disciples were WTO protesters, and so so we made it modern, and it was really about finding who each of those individuals were, and I really collaborated with the actors a great deal on that. And we had the director that I've worked with quite a bit that directed that, Brian Yorkie, was really great about walking into the room of the designers and saying, I got nothing. What are we going to do with this play? And we all created what that concept was. And then he always invites me into to the callbacks auditions, so I get to know what the actor is bringing to it, along with the process of figuring out what they're wearing. And so that whole process was so collaborative. And I got to ask then we also had a pizza party with all the actors to really find out what each of those people were, what they thought they wanted what they're hoping for in this production. And I remember John Scott, an actor that has a very baby face, saying, I just want to be an adult man. I always have to play the kid. I'd like to be the adult man. And I was like, right on. And so he became the biker, grew his hair out, grew his full beard out, right? And he came up to me during the dress rehearsals and thanked me so much for listening to him and just bringing him into that process. So the projects I loved a lot are not necessarily because I feel like the costumes were really awesome, but more so about that the collaboration of the entire process was so fulfilling that it just becomes a peak experience. And I love collaboration, and when we can all inform each other about things, that's what's most exciting for me. Yeah.
Great questions, everybody. Faith, do you see more great questions out there?
I do. You guys are doing it again, sending all the awesome questions. I'm going to do a combo question because we have one that's very specific, and then I'm going to make it slightly broader for you. So we have a student who says she is at WSU with the fashion merchandising focus, and she's thinking about moving to PLU or UW drama with a costume design focus. And I'm not going to tell you to recommend one school or the other, which is her question, but like in terms of schools that you might go to focus on this, and then in a broader sense, when you graduate, how do you look for work? How do you continue the cycle of working?
Yeah. Well, great, Faith, because that allows me to give a really nice plug for Cornish College of the Arts, which I would recommend above the others. And the reason is because, obviously, I admit I am biased, but it is a BFA, so it allows students to concentrate more in specific areas of art making. And one of the things that I am so proud of with Cornish is that we are teaching artists. So all of us that are teaching we are engaged in the industry. And so for me, what that means with students that I've had, past students, is quite often they will assist me on my professional projects, or sometimes co-design with me if it's a student that just shows incredible promise. And that sort of bridges that way into the field, right? I am really fortunate to be a working costume designer, and so I sometimes will take projects just to create additional projects for my students. It is smaller, so it's really concentrated, and so you get great hands-on mentorship. And then just to answer that question in terms of, how you work when you're coming out, again, some of that, you'll do an internship and that puts you into contact with people in this area. We have many successful students that are working at some of the smaller theaters in town, companies that are working out of 12th Ave Arts. And there's a unbelievable amount of fringe theaters in this town, and students past students that I have are working at all different levels of theater making in some of those theaters. Some of them were really interested in wardrobe and are on the wardrobe at the ballet or the opera. So there's it's a program that it really allows for a student to decide the pathway that they want. And our emphasis is on collaboration and finding the uniqueness of each artist. And so, students go off in different aspects of the professional world, because it also, it's not just designing costumes. There are craftspeople. I would be lost without the people that are the what's called the cutter or the draper that's making the costumes that I'm doing, and the stitchers that sew on that, and the crafts makers that are making the really interesting hats and accessories and specialty costumes. It takes an entire team to put this on. So there's many different ways to participate in the realm of costuming, for sure.
Two thoughts. So for what I'm hearing is for students who aren't sticking around Seattle, and are also looking for schools, that are in our area, mentorship is important, and also a connection to the theater scene around them, so that you had that kind of possibility of bridging.
Yes.
The other thing I heard was that I think one of the big differences between some of the students that are watching that are involved in costumes is, like, when they're designing costumes at their school, they're also making them, right? So but the question now for you is, like, when was the last time you made a costume that you designed or that you had to go and get your hands dirty, so to say?
A long time ago, I think. Well, I am a union designer, so that means that I cannot pick up a needle and thread in a costume shop, because many of the theaters in town, the Fifth Avenue is a union shop, right? Just means that artisans that are skilled at doing those particular jobs in a costume shop are hired to do that, and so a costume designer can't come in and take some of that work away. So it's a good thing. It's really spoiled me, but believe me, I made a lot of costumes in the beginning, right? When I started and working at Lakeside and I think I worked there for 14 years doing all their plays. And I happen to live on the campus of Lakeside, and I am right next to the theater building with the costumes stored in my basement. So I was making a lot of things in the beginning of my career, for sure, which I really loved, right? Because that is highly creative, and it's just like problem solving is awesome. I think the scale that I work on now is just too large for me to make things, and because I am a full-time professor as well as a freelance designer, it's hard for me to take shows on that I actually need to produce the costumes at the same time. So I may get asked for that, but I usually will recommend one of my graduates from our program, because I don't have the time for it now. But yes, I do have those sewing skills, and you learn a lot from just getting down and dirty and figuring those things out.
Cool. Oh, did we lose Melanie for a second? Okay, hopefully she'll come back.
She's still here as far as I can see.
Okay.
I'm wondering, for musicals especially, we talk about musicals and scale of them, but also the things you do on stage. How do you make sure that costumes are like easy to move in and dance in, even while still making them like interesting? That is a question that I did not come up with. That was from the chat. So giving credit where credit is due.
Well, I think we might actually have a connection issue with Melanie for a second. So we're gonna see if she can sign back off and sign back on again. But in the meantime, I'm wondering if some of our student panelists can talk a little bit about, like, realizing what the difference is kind of between what you do at your schools and then where kind of that goes. Are you interested in being designers, or are you more interested into getting into the wardrobe side where you're making the costumes? And anybody can answer.
As much fun as fixing the ripped dress 5 times, I think I like designing more than creating the costumes and having fixing the costumes.
And fixing the costumes and fixing the costumes.
Yeah. It wasn't even her skirt.
I would say that I love fashion and I'm totally into fashion, but I like designing more elaborate, fun costumes, like the gods costumes and Once on this Island, stuff that can just be crazy, like something from a parade. Just kind of like maybe a little bit spooky stuff. So, yeah.
I'd say I really like just both aspects of just costume design and costume construction, I guess. I just think they're both really good because I like drawing out kind of what I want it to look like and then just making that, but even if it's just like taking a dress and ripping it apart and putting it back together. I like both aspects of costumes, I guess, as a whole.
And
yeah.
Does anybody have a really good, quick, I saved the day kind of story? You know, I think we've all had those moments where like, oh my gosh, his pants or something like Cora immediately. What happened to you?
So there was this, we were doing a show called 13 Past Midnight. And there's a scene where one of my really good friends, he has to like carry a really big plant on stage, but like make it look like it's really heavy. And he squat down and immediately his like the entire leg just split. And he went, oh. I was like, come here after the scene. So backstage, I had to pin it as fast as I could all the way up his leg. And it was really tragic, but like I think intermission was like 2 scenes away so he could change pants, but it was terrible.
Melanie, welcome back. Yeah, we were just talking about on-stage disasters, which is something you don't have to totally deal with right now, but I think our students are really in that world. I think we have time for one last question. Faith, do you want to cue one up from the
Oh, yes, I said it to your frozen face earlier. We have a question from the chat about how do you make sure that costumes are movable and usable, especially in musical theater when people are doing crazy things with their bodies on stage?
Yeah, well, that really comes into line with the people that are making the costume more than me. I will always know, like that comes with my choices of fabric for sure that I am responsible for. So it's got to have lycra in it, right? But if we need extra gussets for people to do wild things in, or people are going to do what costumers hate, which is knee slides, because it really, it just is impossible. Then we troubleshoot that, it's why, like the person that's making it will reinforce it, or we'll have backups, or, it's always that kind of thing that's where production meetings will always talk about the rehearsal reports will say, and we're doing knee slides. You're right. Yes, and everybody gets to react to it, and then we have to join the party, right? So that is really important in that realm of particularly musicals and active performers about, or is there going to be like flame on stage? And so we have to fireproof all the costumes. So we're troubleshooting all of those things through the process so that we're prepared when we, so that we can say yes instead of no. Yeah.
Such problem solvers, as again is like a recurring theme of so many of the guests that we have on here, and makes you great at what you do. We could be talking to you all weekend, Melanie. You are a wealth of knowledge and a national and regional treasure. But we do have to bring our conversation to an end today. But before we go, I just want to thank our student panelists again, Emily, Sophia, Cora. And as well as Melanie, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're into Fridays at the Fifth, please consider supporting it. I can't do virtual backgrounds right now. It's probably because I updated. So you all will not have to suffer through me trying to duck and not cover it up. But if you do want to support Fridays at the Fifth, please consider donating. Text 5TH to 56521. And that's 5TH to 56521. And you'll receive a link to donate. Special shout out to all the schools who've sent in some amazing photos of their theater communities. We're going to do something with them. So continue to do that as they trickle in. And shout out, Sophia, you have anybody you want to shout out before we sign off?
Just from my school, my high school, Miss Hilbert, Miss Whalen, best creative team workers, directors, love them so much.
Amazing. Emily?
My amazing director, Mrs. Heishi, who is retiring after this year from the high school, and my technical director, DJ.
Amazing. Cora?
My drama teacher, Miss Miners, for always supporting me and giving me opportunities to do everything that I want, that I love, you know?
Oh my gosh, so much love to the educators. I have to echo that. All y'all educators who are out there, thank you so much. And Melanie, do you have somebody you'd like to shout out today before we sign off?
Yeah, I'll shout out my costume students at Cornish for sure.
Hey, cool. Well, here we go. Got another one in the can, and this was a really special one. Thank you so much, Melanie. We're going to be back next week with our special guest, Trina Mills, who's an amazing performer and dancer. She's going to be talking about dance auditions, so that's one that you don't want to miss. And a chance to ask some questions about like what really goes on in a dance audition and get some questions answered there. So one day we're going to be back at the theater, but until then, keep washing those hands, stay safe, make art, make costumes, keep on keeping on, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody. You can unmute your mics and say bye. Adios.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so
You all.
much. Yes.
Stay safe out there. Make good choices.